The factions identified as operating through the city of Pittsburgh clearly had a motive in avenging World War II. The Jewish Holocaust survivors, children of whom were found to be ripping off the museums for millions of dollars and torturing the students of senior faculty who were veterans of the Great War. And, of course, Axis mercenaries from operations like Paperclip who were given CIA contracts and research laboratories. The specifics that show that I have been dealing with criminal enterprise within the Fourth Estate is the way the evidence has been refused admission. And I have been lied to and about, primarily by the British emissaries sent to perpetrate the ruse of investigation so they could fulfill the plan. This is genuine espionage crime. One of the issues is that Wilsell said to me in the Poconos Mountains before AIDS happened at a cafe, "What would you think of a scheme to transform the human race by injecting the blood?" He was heard by someone over on the table who turned their head very rapidly in our direction. He was then at the Jackson Immunogenic Laboratories to set up what Peter Gabriel called an experience park. He knew Walter Hodorowski, who I met at West Virginia's Claymont at the invitation of Robert Fripp of King Crimson. So these were Bowie's personnel. Had prior knowledge of the AIDS plan and created a Venus flytrap on a notorious and ruthless island where Caspar Weinberger lived, and the author of Race and Reason, Carlton Putnam, published his works. So the suspicious circumstances also show that they were not only assassinating King and Bobby Kennedy, but also John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And they gave the whole thing to Yoko Ono as a blank check by pretending to kill John Lennon. That was a ruthless Hollywood prop that was Houdini'd from Pentagon Disney, which explains why Reagan had me in D.C. the day he claims he was shot. His attorney's brochure reads, "There's no such thing as objective reality, only what the jury believes." These are the facts. The media refuses to report the facts. I was tortured by men named Ronnie and Caspar before anybody knew that Ronald Reagan and Caspar Weinberger were going to be working together back in 1973. They also denied the fact that Wattenmaker, an Attica State psychiatrist, had me in custody in Pittsburgh and played the first King Crimson record for me when I was 8 or 9 years old at a slumber party. His children went on to be neurosurgeons, just like the lyrics, which means that it was a realist extremist album. They called an observation because they were using me for human vivisection in a revenge attack by Queen Elizabeth, who staged an Alice in Wonderland to Houdini, John Lennon, to give a blank check to Yoko Ono for revenge, all the way up to a nuclear ultimatum. This was the AIDS attack that they called Death Seed. Greg Carl said the dialectic established at the outset. His partner McGarvey, upper classmate at Tyler Art School with Wilsell, talked about pigment and figment. These are the language concepts that Pitt sought to destroy all trace of evidence of. They took the Gutter Snipes proposal for a group project with all the evidence admitting I was tortured and that they staged a pussy ball game with the help of Jeffrey Corporation, Penis Gabriel, Yoko Ono, and Barack Obama clocked to the AIDS attack and had it eradicated. These documents do still exist. One of the Gutter Snipes committed suicide. It was found in his effects, but again, Pittsburgh actively suppressed this information at the demand of Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood sent me a smoking gun shortly after the murder of Searcy Kennedy. And when I wrote to Courtney, 2 more Kennedys were killed in a very ugly, Oliver Stone type of anonymous call method. The evidence shows that the filmmakers who made the film Diva, which features the sponsorship of a black token woman singing in the opera, had designated me for my hitchhiking adventure to hear Robert Fripp in St. Louis for my birthday, and said the evidence is in the kids' mailbag. Back when Zell was talking before AIDS happened, the evidence was in the kids' mailbag. This is clearly evidence that the Diva gang were in on the semiotic plan to blend a snuff film murder operation against the Kennedys and incite deluded mobs of people in the United States against their own government in the name of Yoko Ono's blank check for a revenge attack over Hiroshima. That is what all of the evidence shows. All of the evidence shows that the Fourth Estate refuses to acknowledge it. They have perpetuated it. They have allowed it. They even helped Trump attempt to violently, physically overthrow the U.S. Congress. There's no disgrace greater for the United States of America than one that's pending for their inaction and their continued abuse of a witness. Media has advocates for themselves who poach and terrorize me personally at every turn, in every school, in every store, on every bus. They poach and they terrorize and they stalk and they subject me to innuendos. But what's really going on is, if that isn't frightening enough on its own terms, is that these cowardly people are I'll find it because I wrote it down. I'll read to you my conclusion on the matter as soon as I can call it up. My computer's been malfunctioning. When you read my affidavit, you split in two. One half of your persona exonerates me by admitting you don't understand what I have made visible to you. In other words, I have helped you understand what you admit you don't as an adult. So you split in two. One half of your persona exonerates me by admitting you don't understand what is visible to you. The other half of your cloven identity braves blood oath and death vow against a brutally damaged deaf child at the mercy of killers, perverts, who were earmarking a dummy for a sale of invisible ink. This is what you've done. The Beatles are part of a plan to turn the people of the United States against their own government. When you read my affidavit, you split in two. One half of your persona exonerates me by admitting you don't understand what is visible to you. The other half of your cloven identity braves blood oath and death vow against a brutally damaged deaf child at the mercy of killers, perverts, who are earmarking a dummy for a sale of invisible ink. How I know AIDS was an attack by these putreds is voluminous, due to their labyrinth of power and worm-tonguing spite that can be reduced to a few exact facts. Zell spoke as reported. Wattenmaker proves King Crimson's first record was a realist extremist social plan. The homophone, Gail Carolyn Burston. The person who wrote Wah, what wah, Enola Gay in my notebooks was Ken Lewis, an Agent Orange fiction in Pittsburgh. These are Daniel Ellsberg's teams helping out Hitler Reagan.